Here's a number that used to mean something completely different: $100,000 a year. For decades, that was the number. You hit six figures and you'd made it. That was the finish line. And a lot of people are hitting that number now, feeling like they should be thriving. And instead, they're staring at their bank account, wondering why it doesn't feel anything like they thought it would. Here's the thing nobody tells you. $100,000 today doesn't buy what $100,000 used to buy. And worse than that, hitting the number itself changes your behavior in ways that quietly cancel out most of the benefit. This isn't about the number being fake. It's about a trap that specifically catches people right around this income level, and almost nobody names it directly. So today, I want to break down exactly what happens the moment people cross into six figures, why it feels like less than it should, and what to actually do about it. My name is Jordan. If you've hit 100K or you're closing in on it and something still feels off, this one's for you. All right, let's start with the first part of the trap, because it's simpler than people think: purchasing power.
$100,000 in 2010 had significantly more buying power than $100,000 does today. Inflation has quietly eaten a meaningful chunk of what that number actually represents. So when people compare themselves to an older mental benchmark of what 100K meant, they're comparing against a number that hasn't existed in real terms for over a decade. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the purchasing power piece is actually the smaller half of the trap. The bigger half is what happens to your taxes and your spending the moment you cross that threshold. Let's talk taxes first, because this is the part almost nobody walks through with real numbers. As your income rises past certain thresholds, you move into higher marginal tax brackets. Not your whole income, just the portion above each threshold. But people often don't do that math correctly in their head. They see a $15,000 raise and mentally add all $15,000 to their monthly budget. In reality, once you account for federal tax, state tax in a lot of states, Social Security and Medicare, a raise in that income range often nets you somewhere between 65 and 75 cents on the dollar, depending on where you live. A $15,000 raise might only show up as $10,000 or so in actual increased take-home pay.
That's the first crack. People plan their lifestyle around the gross number, not the net number. And the gap between those two numbers gets wider as income rises. Now here's the second crack, and this is the one that really springs the trap: lifestyle inflation. The moment people cross 100K, something predictable happens. The car gets nicer. The apartment or house gets bigger. Dining out becomes more frequent, and the restaurants get more expensive. Vacations go from occasional to routine, and routine can become elaborate. None of these changes feel reckless in the moment. Each one feels like a reasonable upgrade that matches a person's new income level. But collectively, they consume the entire raise, and often more than the raise, especially once you factor in the tax bite from the first crack. Let's put real numbers on it.
Say someone goes from $80,000 to $105,000. On paper, that's a $25,000 raise. After taxes, in a lot of states, that nets out to roughly $17,000 to $18,000 in actual additional take-home pay per year, or about $1,400 to $1,500 a month. Now, here's what commonly happens to that $1,400 a month. $400 goes to a nicer car payment, upgrading from something paid off to something financed. $350 goes to a bigger apartment or added home expenses. $300 goes to more frequent, nicer dining out. $250 goes to more elaborate vacations. And $100 disappears into general lifestyle creep. Subscriptions, small upgrades, things that used to feel unnecessary and now feel normal. Add that up. That's $1,400 a month, completely absorbed. The person now earns $25,000 more per year than they used to, and their actual savings rate hasn't moved. In some cases, because of new debt from financing a nicer car or a slightly overextended lease, it's actually gotten worse. This is the trap. Not the income level itself,
the predictable behavioral response to crossing it.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, Jordan, but shouldn't people be allowed to enjoy a raise they worked hard for? Absolutely. This isn't an argument against enjoying more income. It's an argument for being conscious about how much of it you're allowing to evaporate into lifestyle upgrades versus how much is actually changing your financial trajectory. Here's an analogy that makes this click. Imagine you're on a treadmill, and every time you speed up, the incline also increases by the same amount. You're working harder, you're moving your legs faster, and yet you're staying in exactly the same place. That's what a raise without intentional structure does for a lot of people crossing into six figures. The effort increases, the position doesn't change. Now, here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it's the piece that actually determines whether 100K becomes a genuine turning point or just a bigger, more expensive version of the same financial situation.
The solution isn't refusing every lifestyle upgrade. It's deciding in advance what percentage of any raise goes toward lifestyle versus what percentage goes toward actually changing your financial position. A common and genuinely effective approach is something like a 50-50 split. Half of any raise goes toward enjoying your increased income. Nicer things, more experiences, whatever actually adds value to your life. The other half goes automatically toward increasing retirement contributions, building investments, or paying down higher interest debt. Let's run that same $1,400 a month through this framework instead. $700 goes toward genuine lifestyle enjoyment, and you get to decide what that actually looks like for you, guilt-free, because it's a deliberate allocation, not an accident. The other $700 goes automatically into a retirement account or investment account, set up to transfer the same day the raise hits, before it ever touches a checking account where lifestyle spending can quietly absorb it. Over 20 years, that's $700 a month, invested at a historical 8% average return, grows to roughly $412,000. That's the actual difference between crossing into six figures and staying financially exactly where you were versus crossing into six figures and genuinely changing your long-term trajectory. Now, here's a piece of this that's easy to miss, and it matters just as much as the money itself. This has to happen automatically, not through willpower. If that $700 sits in a checking account waiting for you to manually decide to invest it every month, lifestyle creep will slowly claim more and more of it over time. It has to leave your account the same day the raise hits, before your spending patterns have a chance to expand around the new number. Let's talk about one more piece of this trap, because it's specific to right around the 100K mark. Status pressure changes at this income level in a way that's different from lower incomes. People start comparing themselves to a new peer group, coworkers who've been at this level longer, people they follow online who seem to be living a $150,000 lifestyle on what might actually be a 100K income financed with debt. The comparison point shifts upward exactly at the moment your income shifted upward, so the feeling of making it never actually arrives. It just moves the goalposts to match wherever you currently are. This is worth naming directly, because most people experience this as a personal failing. Why don't I feel successful even though I'm earning more? When it's actually a completely predictable psychological pattern that happens to almost everyone at this income transition, not a sign that something is wrong with them specifically.
So here's a practical starting point if you're at, near, or recently past this threshold. First, calculate your actual net increase from any raise, not the gross number, so your mental math matches reality instead of overestimating what you actually have to work with. Second, decide your split in advance, something like 50-50 between lifestyle and long-term financial position, before the money hits your account, not after you've already gotten used to spending it. Third, automate the long-term portion, so it never has the chance to get absorbed by lifestyle creep. And fourth, be honest about the comparison trap. The people you're measuring yourself against at this income level are often financing an appearance, not necessarily living a genuinely more secure financial life than you. Because here's the actual lesson underneath the 100K trap. The number itself was never the finish line. It was never designed to be.
It's just a point where the math around your money gets a little more complicated. The temptations get a little more expensive, and the comparison group gets a little more aspirational. Crossing it doesn't automatically create security. Only what you deliberately do with the gap between old spending and new income actually creates that. Most people cross this threshold and let the increase quietly disappear into a slightly nicer version of exactly where they already were. The people who actually benefit from crossing it are the ones who decided in advance exactly where the extra money would go, before their lifestyle had the chance to decide for them. If this changed how you're thinking about your own next raise, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, when you think about your last raise, honestly, where did most of that extra money actually end up going?